Welcome everyone to the final interview of the CFDA's Professional Development Series in recognition of Women's History Month. Through this series, we identified 3 inspiring female talents from various different disciplines who honor the craft and artisanship of design and who support and uplift the work of other women. Today, we are so proud to share the story of Ngozi Okaro, who is the founder and executive director of Custom Collaborative. Ngozi is an activist for economic, environmental, and social justice. She founded Custom Collaborative in 2016 to support immigrant and low-income women launching sustainable fashion businesses and careers, while simultaneously advocating for a fashion industry that honors planet and serves fashion industry workers, the majority of whom are immigrant and low-income women, and thoughtful consumers who want quality, sustainable clothes that fit the body well. Custom Collaborative also partners with companies that need skilled employees, providing a valuable industry service. Ngozi builds bridges in and between organizations and individuals to create opportunity and access. Her background includes leading initiatives at National Urban League and its affiliates INSEAD and Yale. So welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today. My first question for you are, what are some of the fundamental ways that you support low income and immigrant women through Custom Collaborative?
Thanks so much. That is a great question. First, I'm really excited to be here, so thank you so much for the opportunity. We support women in a number of ways who are starting their careers. Of course, we provide free fashion, business, and technology training, financial support via stipends, personal finance training, sustainability training, Metro cards, grant access. Jobs, of course, clients, support from partners like food pantries and wellness, and equally important but often overlooked, confidence building and leadership development.
Amazing. I'm sure everyone listening would be so intrigued to learn more about the experiences and stories of women that you've empowered through your program. Are there any that you can share with us today?
Sure. I think about a few people who we have impacted and helped them to become who they are and who they were meant to be. One of them works with us. She would say that her story in this country started in a little bit of a bad situation, having survived domestic violence and moving into homeless shelter. And so since she joined us at Custom Collaborative, she's been able to learn a skill that is meaningful to her, that provides for her and her family, moved out of a shelter by making goods that she learned how to make through Custom Collaborative, making and selling them. She has her own line. She sometimes works for other people, and she just has a lot of ingenious ways of starting businesses and making money. And it's so great to see her where she should be, because in her home country, she had a business, she had a nice apartment and a car. And so now she is, with the support of Custom Collaborative and many other participants in our program, back to her rightful place.
That's incredible. Well, it might not surprise many of you who are listening today that Equal Pay Day falls on March 14th, the same time of year as Women's History Month. And in the US, it's widely known that there is a gender pay gap between men and women. And for certain groups of women, specifically women of color, the gap is even wider. The majority of the fashion manufacturing workforce and the workforce in general of the fashion industry is made up of women. So in your opinion, how can we ensure salary parity when fashion so clearly relies on these skilled workers?
That's a really great and important question. And I think also it's important to say that, like, yes, Equal Pay Day for women overall is March 14th. But for the people who make our clothes, which, as you're saying, is Black and Brown women, Equal Pay Day is a lot later, right? So for um, Asian American women, Equal Pay Day is May 3rd. For Black women, Equal Pay Day is September 21st. And for Latinas, Equal Pay Day is October 8th, with Native women being November 30th. So women have to work almost 6 months or a year longer than a man to make this same pay. So as we talk about parity and equity, it's really important that we just reflect on um, how we can do things differently. So I feel like one of the things that we could definitely do is have companies audit their pay systems. Like, why do you pay certain roles certain amounts? And how can you do things more equitably? Does it involve revising some things? Or do you have to create a new system out of whole cloth, which is completely possible, right? There are professionals who do this work, there's computers and their algorithms. But I think if we look at how is it that we end up extracting the most from the people who are most vulnerable and paying them the least, what is a different model that will work better in the coming decades? And so I think there are a few ways besides auditing pay systems and potentially coming up with new ones, but also investing in training and development for current employees, investing in startup businesses that could eventually be partners. There are so many things that can be done, and it just requires a little bit of creativity and thinking about how to create the system that we all want to work in.
Absolutely wonderful suggestions. Um, getting into the recognition of Women's History Month again, what does Women's History Month mean to you?
That's a great question. Women's History Month for me means that we are constantly making progress. And hopefully it's forward. Sometimes it's forward in one way and then we're moving back in some other ways. And so even thinking about, well, women are moving forwards in terms of like being able to be in leadership, right? So we have a woman vice president of the United States, but then in some ways we're moving backwards, like bodily autonomy and how do we control our own reproductive health. So I just think about the forward progress, and I occasionally get a little bit down and I look back on where we came from and see that we're making progress and moving ahead equitably. So I just think about the 1913 suffrage march for women to have the right to vote. And at that time, Black women were not included. So this march that was in Washington, D.C., members of Delta Sigma Theta sorority got together and said, a group of Black women, and said, we're going to be in this march and we may be subject to violence. Of course, they were threatened, but we're going to be in this march. And so they came up the rear of this march and said, like, we're taking our place. This is our moment. We're going to be here. And so I'm just emboldened by that and the fact that some of these moves for equity and justice for women are more integrated than they were before.
And you bring up a bit of history in your response, and it's always interesting to think and look at the legacy of other women in the fashion industry. Are there any particular people or moments that have inspired you or motivated you as a businesswoman?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are definitely some who were historic and then some in the present. So if I think of more of the historic, I think of Anne Lowe, the famed designer. I think about my own grandmother, Lucy Nkuru Okaro, who actually dyed and sold cloth as part of her way to help provide for the family. And then I think about people who are currently hardworking, like Tracy Reese, who has really reframed her focus to focus more on sustainability and equitable rights in community. And then people like Mara Hoffman and Dana Davis, who turned a business from one that was not environmentally conscious to one that is actually now a leader in environmental sustainability and in ethical business. So I have a lot of inspiration.
Those are wonderful, wonderful references. And personally, for you, were there any women in the fashion industry who were pivotal in helping you along your journey?
For sure. Before I started Custom Collaborative, I practiced law, but before that, my first job out of college was as a retail manager in a fashion store. So fashion has always been really important to me. And as I think about it now in the current context, I would say that a short list is Celine DiCarlo, who works with Mara Hoffman, Veronica Jones, who works with me and was an early buyer and retailer and wholesaler. Guyleen Grace, who's a friend who has extensive background in production, but also sustainability. Laurel Schaefer, who is into sustainable fashion and really helped me. All of these women really helped as I was launching Custom Collaborative and growing it in the early days, in some cases before it was even a thing, before we even incorporated. So there are many women along the way who've helped lift me.
You've referenced a few ways that the industry can make advancements for women, but how would you encourage fashion brands to take steps to make their own advancements?
Absolutely. One of the things that I think about is the stories and experiences that people share with me. A woman who was in our training institute, Inia, told me that where she worked in a factory and she was just given the instruction, sew this seam. And so she would sew the same seam on the same type of garment day after day. And she didn't really understand anything more, just do this. And so after she came through our program and learned about construction and design, she felt like her eyes were opened and she said, I could have learned this, but they didn't give us the opportunity. They just told us to do this same thing day after day. But now I understand it and it makes more sense and I feel more connected. So I think on the individual level, it's about giving people the opportunity to do more and recognizing that people have brains and sometimes want to solve problems and think about things. Sometimes we do just want to do a similar thing, but there's an opportunity to invest in the current workforce and help them grow in a way that grows businesses. And I think also that it's all about investing in emerging companies, smaller companies that may be women led and haven't had the chance because they don't have access to capital, but doing a good look and a deep dive. And there are a lot of places that don't have the expertise, like a lot of companies don't have the expertise to do that type of investigation, but there are many people who have small funds and can help investors look at who to work with, who to partner with. And I think it's, again, just about opening our eyes to the possibilities and not saying there are these one, two, or three firms or businesses that we need to invest with, but there's a whole world out there that we don't know about that we could all learn from.
Through your work at Custom Collaborative, you're empowering women who want to launch their own sustainable fashion businesses and careers. And for Black and Brown women in the fashion industry, they've really been at the forefront and spearheading the sustainability and circularity movement. Can you talk about that and share some insights and experiences you have?
Absolutely. Recently, we had a graduation from our training program, and all 9 of the graduates' looks were made sustainably. So whether someone's uh, top was a really cute belted top that converted into a tote bag, right? Or whether it was that someone made a convertible collar that could be worn somewhere else, with a different garment than it was shown with. Everybody used upcycled and repurposed materials, and in some instances, even garments that were remade into raw materials for this new creation. And as one of our participants who's from Angola told me a couple of years ago, I just learned about sustainability when I came to this country and to Custom Collaborative, but at home, this is what we do all the time. We're always reusing things and making the most out of them. And she's from Angola. So I just thought about how much that sentiment is true for the women from the 25 countries with whom we work, and also for the women, specifically Black and Brown women, lower income women who have, of course, made less money, as we talked about in the first place, and found a way to do more with fewer things. And I think that that has been the history since Black and Brown women have been in this country as it's known in the United States, right? It was always a place before, but have had to do more with less, and how much we could all learn from that ethos if we can figure out in our own daily lives what's the next best thing to do, right? So it might not be that we've got to buy this cutest recyclable bag, but we can just use the grocery bags that we have already, whether it's shopping for groceries again or using them as a plastic bag when we deep condition our hair, or just even not taking the plastic bag in the first place. But I think um, that the idea that Black and Brown women are central to sustainability is so true, and so they're leading the charge, even if they're not getting the credit. But again, I think there are places where we can all work together to save this planet so it's recognizable and habitable for humans.
Well, there's definitely been a clear trend and theme in these interviews of making less. And it's funny to say that during through a series where fashion and making things is part of our business, but it is so essential as we continue and look forward in how we are all leading our lives in the industry and working together. But I want to thank you so much for these incredible stories and insights. I mean, the work you're doing to uplift, to support women is so important, to not only just highlight during Women's History Month, but all the time. And I encourage all of our listeners and our viewers to learn more about Custom Collaborative and the incredible work they're doing. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me to learn more about their work. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sasha. It's been great.